What happened in qualifying for the Mexico City Grand Prix? Hello everybody and welcome back to the P1 podcast with Matt and Thomas Bellingham. That's correct. Tommy is ill AF. So we're going to try and get through this podcast. Max didn't get pole position, spoiler alert, but that does not give you any extra energy, Tommy. But he could be worse. He could literally be in 18th like his teammate is. Tommy, how are you though still? All right?
I've been better, but
we got a smile out of you. That was
yes,
a good start.
It was a good quali, to be fair. So that's poked me up a bit.
It was an absolute worldie quali, to be fair to you. It was unexpected in 2 of the 3 sessions, I would say. So let's get straight into it before Tommy passes out. With Q1, where the 5 bottom drivers were Colapinto, Piastri, Perez, Ocon, and Zhou. It was a very chaotic, unexpected Q1 session. For both, I would say, look, Perez, I did not expect him to go out in Q1. He wasn't looking great throughout the entirety of the weekend up until this point, but I had faith that he was going to pull through for my top 6 crazy prediction. Alas, he did not, and he qualified 18th. Gutting, really, actually, because I genuinely wanted Perez to have a great weekend in what I can only assume is going to be his last Formula 1 weekend in a competitive car, although I would actually like to hazard a guess that if he was at any other team, he might actually have done better. He just does not get on with that Red Bull and has not done for a very long time.
He's been having a bad run of form, to say the least. We spoke about it in your crazy prediction that he's not even finished in the top 6. I think, was it once in 13?
Once in 13, yeah.
Yeah. His qualifying has let him down more often than not, but I think this is as bad as it gets, and to happen in his own kind of home race, that a lot of people think that this was the race that Red Bull were kind of saving him for, if you like, and making sure he was still in the car because, he is the home hero, to say the least. Like, they go absolutely balmy for him. 7
thousandths of a second away from sharing the back row with Zhou Guanyu, which would have been even more painful. But 18th still incredibly painful. But I would say more so, of course, Perez very painful at his home race, but Piastri, 17th position in the McLaren. A McLaren that is absolutely capable of getting somewhere near the front, if not pole position. Maybe not today, if we look at what Lando managed. But to be knocked out in Q1, of course, Oscar made that mistake, ran deep, got his lap time deleted. He lost about a second, I think, going wide as well. It's not good enough, though, is it, for at this stage of the season, for Oscar to make a mistake like that? And he said it himself after qualifying that it was just a mistake, but perhaps feeling the pressure of it being quite a crazy Q1, to say the least. Some teams and drivers trying a medium at the start, and I think that in itself put a bit of pressure on some drivers to then have to go onto the softs because of the track evolution. But look, McLaren are fighting not just Red Bull, but also Ferrari for the Constructors' Championship. Oscar, as much as he probably doesn't want to personally, for the team, needs to try and help Lando Norris in the World Championship by beating Max Verstappen. And just like we were speaking in SQ1 in only Austin, it's happened again.
A shocker for Piastri. It's the nature of essentially Q1 being so incredibly close that one small mistake can cost you. And he was on the back foot as soon as he kind of made that error in the final sector. And then, when he did his other lap, not good enough. The fact that it's happened again has been so good, to the point where he's been incredibly hyped up, been doing amazingly well in the races alongside Lando, and a lot of people saying that he's a bit more aggressive than Lando. But his pace in the last 2 races compared to Lando, if we go off this qualifying as well, kind of slipped back, and I guess even worse to where it has been previously. So a shocker for Piastri, because in terms of Lando's title, he's probably like, oh no, anyway. But realistically, Ferrari and Red Bull less so, but Ferrari are coming for that Constructors' title. So he has to deliver from that side, because maybe, just maybe, if this form continues and he can't maximise the results and McLaren do have a bit of a fall off, then the Constructors' Championship could be game on after all.
Question at Piastri Core _ what's going on with Oscar last weekend and then this? I think it's too soon to say that he's falling off or jumping the gun too much here. It's back-to-back difficult weekends, I would say, for Oscar. His pace potential this weekend was there, but he just didn't deliver. Whereas Austin, I feel like he was just lacking a little bit of speed compared to his teammate. Let's see what happens in the next few races, but drivers have blips, and I think this is a very poorly timed blip for Oscar in the midst of what's going on in the championships.
Exactly. It's nothing to kind of scream and shout about and worry about yet. Oscar's had a brilliant season, just had a couple of bad weekends in a row, really, so far. I mean, he's still got a chance tomorrow. We saw what Lando did from the back of the grid last year in a McLaren. You've got to say that the McLaren is even better than it was last year, so...
Colapinto has to be mentioned, of course, in the Williams, and you wouldn't think, maybe earlier on in the season we'd be talking about a Williams being knocked out in Q1, but Albon had a pretty sensational qualifying up in 9th, and Colapinto just missing out. I say just, he missed by a tenth and a half, which was surprising considering his run of form and the momentum he currently had. Actually, was it a 10th? Yeah, it's about a tenth and a bit.
Albon was kind of well clear, really. In Q1 is exactly what he needed after the crash that he had, during practice, which again put even more pressure on him and people questioning whether his head's gone. But Alex in particular had the exact session he needed, and Colapinto a bit of a disappointment.
Okay. Actually, another question before we go to Q2. P1 Patreon member Abu Dhabi 2021 survivor. I feel like this guy keeps cropping up in our podcasts. Liam to Red Bull at Brazil. Could they make the swap this quickly with Perez? Are they going to? Have they said, look, you've had Mexico, mate. Now we're going to do...
That would be so embarrassing.
It would be savage, but what is more embarrassing? Continuing to try and defend him after these run of performances? Do they genuinely want to do better in the constructors? I think things like that will definitely be telling in the coming races. I don't think they will, just purely from how much they have supported him up until this point. But it might be a case of pressing a big red button of a panic alarm of, oh my God, we're going to finish third in the constructors.
Oh no, anyway, for Red Bull. Again, it really doesn't matter for them. They've got plenty of money, and if anything, they'll have more wind tunnel time, so they're probably loving it right now.
We say that, and I know we kind of write that off as fans. I don't think that's how teams actually think, though.
Not the personnel, but I wonder if the big bosses aren't as fussed, like Christian Horner, for example. I think they wouldn't do it now. I think it would be embarrassing for them as a whole because it almost... If they did it now, it would basically be them admitting, yeah, we kept him on for Mexico and Mexico only, which would look even more embarrassing in my opinion. They just have to grin and bear it and then make the change next year, which I think they will do.
Let's go to Q2 then, where the 5 out were Tsunoda, Lawson, Alonso, Stroll and Bottas. Let's go straight into the question. P1 Patreon member AMG Piper. Is Yuki having these silly accidents what's costing him the Red Bull seat? I think it's definitely a factor that Yuki can blow hot and cold, both under the helmet and also with mistakes. He has got the raw speed and potential though, and of course Yuki making these errors is one thing, but is it costing him an opportunity at Red Bull? No, I think it's Perez's situation and the power that he clearly has over that seat, whether it's due to his fans or whatever the million reasons are that he's staying in that seat. Yuki still, even after this, has earned an opportunity to try at Red Bull, no doubt. Any other team with that situation, I think he's had a go at this point. That being said, is he the perfect replacement for Perez? I don't know. Maybe Red Bull see him as a little bit of a risk in some ways. But either way, it can't get much worse than what Perez is currently putting on the board. So there's plenty other reasons why they haven't chosen Yuki, and it's a shame because he has shown at many occasions this year that he is good enough.
Yeah, he's had a good season. I do think Christian Horner just doesn't really like him.
He
as a
woke
driver.
up today, though, didn't he? I bet he's like, oh,
yeah. He's
Yuki
like,
in the wall. That's why we don't choose.
Yeah, this is exactly what I meant. That's exactly what he'll do. It's probably the worst timing it possibly could have been for Yuki Tsunoda to have this crash, because he was actually looking like he was going to. Well, he did beat Lawson, but it's not a positive to crash in the wall and beat your teammate. But he looked like he had the measure of Lawson this weekend. He'd been looking very quick. So to have the error, I think it gives Red Bull that excuse of being like, oh, look, see, this is why we'd be a bit worried.
Other things to mention, I think Bottas was shafted. I reckon he was going to qualify much better than 15th with that crash that Tsunoda had. I think he had one more run in him when Yuki made that error at the end of the session. And apart from that, Aston Martin being washed and Lawson being slightly screwed over because I think he was also on a lap until Yuki binned it in the wall. Q3 and the top 10. Sainz, Verstappen, Norris, Leclerc, Russell, Hamilton, Magnussen, Gasly, Albon and Hulkenberg. First question, Lyo Brave. How good was Q3 from Sainz? How good has Carlos Sainz's entire weekend been is the question I want to ask, because he is alive. And Carlos has these weekends over a Formula 1 season where he just looks brilliant and has been better than Leclerc. I will say it. Throughout the entire weekend, he's looked faster, and I think he absolutely categorically deserved pole position today. What more is there really to say apart from I hope Carlos wins the race from there as well? It's going to be difficult. Do you even want pole position down towards turn one?
Maybe not.
Not really, but it still gives him a fantastic chance from there.
Yeah, the fact that Carlos was so clear of the field and you know, he made that joke, didn't he, on the team radio where they're like, what a lap, and he went 2 laps because both his laps were unbelievable.
And they're good enough for pole, both of them.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, Charles Leclerc is one of the best, if not the best in the business when it comes to qualifying. So for Carlos to put that gap on him, he's had an amazing weekend. You know, just because we're, and I'll say it again, absolutely doesn't deserve to be in a Williams next year. Yeah, an amazing job from Sainz again. But yes, you're right. Does he want to be there, particularly with a certain Max Verstappen behind him who's going to get straight in that slipstream?
Max and Lando, it's going to be quite interesting. And of course, the next question is about Lando. MLG Sports 123. Is this a failure to convert from Lando? I'm not going to jump on that wagon necessarily. Lando said that they sort of hit a peak quite quickly and then failed to really build from that. And I'm going to take that with his word. It does seem as though there was a bit more of a struggle there than others. I think when you look at Q2, for example, there was only a half a tenth improvement for Lando between Q2 and Q3, whereas Carlos improved by 0.6 of a second, Max improved by 3.5, and generally when you look down the list, everyone's improving by 0.3 or more. So perhaps Lando did leave a little bit on the table. Charles definitely did. I will say that. He had a massive moment in the middle sector and also lost, I think, a little bit in the last as well. Because I think it would have been a Ferrari 1-2 had it not been for that. But Lando, I think, as well. Perhaps there was something missing in that final percent when you push that tiny bit harder in Q3 and leave it all on the table. But it's not the worst place in the world to start, as we just mentioned, with Carlos being on pole, not being particularly favourable.
I think it's probably the best place to start P3 at Mexico because you get an amazing slipstream down to turn 1. If you could choose your grid spot, you'd probably would go for P3. But yeah, maybe Lando left something on the table with how quick he was looking in the rest of the session. I think he will be absolutely, a little bit gutted that he's behind Verstappen again in qualifying of how it was looking, particularly when Max had that deleted lap and also just generally the rest of the weekend. But I think it's incredibly unfair to kind of basically say he bottled it or have a go at him when it's his teammate that's down in 17th. So it's completely unfair to have a go at Lando when he's the one that's put the car third when his teammate's 17th. So
next question, Gareth L.E. How bad has that Red Bull got to be for Max to have a bad weekend? Great drive considering his prep, deleted lap time and sticks it on the front row. I can't commend Max Verstappen's performance this weekend more than what we've just seen. It's almost bordering on remarkable that he has all these problems with his engine. I'm thinking biggest flop confirmed. Love it. I'm not really. In the back of my mind, I'm going, it's Max Verstappen. We haven't seen anything yet, and it's just Friday. But he had a lack of running. He then had that lap time deleted. It's all the pressure in the world on his shoulders to deliver a lap in the final moments of Q3. And he does. He sticks on the front row. His teammate is 18th. I know Perez is seen as this terrible driver now, but he's not. Perez is not a terrible driver. Perhaps he is not as good as he used to be, but he's not horrendous. He's not an 18th position driver, in my opinion. Put him in a different car, I think we see a different result for Checo, and we've seen it previously before he went to Red Bull. But for Max to put it where he does, is just... This is the reason why he will be and get many more world championships from here on in as well.
Yeah, it was a sensational performance under huge pressure. I'm secretly glad he got a penalty because it kind of shuts up that boring narrative that he'll never be penalised, which is something that Lewis Hamilton had.
When you say penalty, you mean track limit
Sorry,
warning.
track limit warning. They deleted his lap, which is something that, every single world champion that's dominated the sport, everyone was like, oh, Hamilton's so lucky he never gets a penalty, and Vettel's so lucky he never gets a penalty, and that kind of has continued on to Max Verstappen. Got his lap time deleted.
It was an absolute corner cut and a half.
Oh, it was.
As soon as he did it was
100%.
it's done. I literally was like, when we were streaming I was streaming on Twitch, I said, give me a screenshot now. That was 100% a track limit. If he does not get his lap time deleted, we're in big trouble.
Yeah, it was Mario Kart mushroom over the almost onto the grass.
Next question from PD Doling. As much as I miss him, was Gunter holding Haas back? I don't really think we can say that Haas's turnaround is due to the change at the top that quickly. I don't. Haas came into this season basically saying they're going to probably be last. We were all sort of joking that they were going to be last, and they've turned out to not be. I don't think Gunter, with a few smashed doors, was particularly stopping them from getting into Q3. I'm sure there are small, minute things you can talk about, perhaps Gunter's style of management, but from a car perspective, you would think that most of that stuff was already done. It's not as if they, Io Komatsu has just walked in and gone, no, change that, do this, do that, change that, do that, yeah, and that, and that, and that. It's not quite like that, I don't think. Similar with like Binotto and how when he left, it's not like Fred, the first day he walked in, everything changed and it was amazing. So that's how I sit on it.
I think that you've got to give Komatsu a huge amount of credit for the fact that Haas are still performing where they are, and that's something that Haas never really did. And you do wonder if it is something to do with the fact that having a team principal that's more of a engineering side of things can help push their development forward throughout the season, because we all expected Haas to be rubbish. I think they've actually been the biggest surprise of the whole season, but it's not been rare to see Haas being 7th or 8th or 9th or 10th, but that's at the start of the season. When it gets to the final few races, they're normally awful and they've had a big drop off. So I don't think it is, like you say, like you weren't saying that it's like this instant, like just because Gunther's gone, everything's great. But Komatsu deserves a huge amount of credit for what he's done so far, because they still seem to be delivering the points, and what a performance it would be if they do finish where they are in the Constructors' Championship.
Absolutely, yeah. For Komatsu to keep them where they are, I think that's a very good point, actually, of how Haas have not dropped off, and if anything, are continuing to incrementally improve. Speaking about Haas, actually, as well, Hülkenberg making that mistake into the final sector, which, again, costing him, once again, Nico, which we're very much expecting
Haas
him
fire
to...
the wrong driver? I'm joking.
But, of course, Hulk making another mistake in quali, which is pretty unheard of for Nico, and K-Mag delivering once again up in 7th. It's wonder times for Haas at the moment.
Yeah, very good from Haas. K-Mag up in basically best of the rest. A really good performance from K-Mag. And yeah, Hülkenberg to still be 10th is decent. They've got a great chance of double points again for Haas. So yeah, it's crazy how many points they've scored when I definitely thought they were going to score none.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening, and we will see you live on Twitch tomorrow, Matt P1 Tommy, if you don't follow us already. And also, podcast and everything else will be coming your way very soon. Lots of love, sweet dreams. Hope you feel better soon if you are also feeling ill out there. I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, if you are celebrating
but
either
also
of those in the next couple of days.
Stop listening to the podcast till December and New Year.
No.
Keep listening.
No,
there's many more podcasts to go.